Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's Superman. Yet another one. Superman. This is James Gunn's Superman, coming out in 2025, starring David Corenswet. Yes, the projectionist from Pearl, the horror, not Pearl, the singer. Also co-starring Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane, she from The Adventures of the Amazing Mrs. Maisel, or The Marvellous Mrs. Maisel, whatever it is. Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. But what's most telling and what's most interesting and what's most of note with this new iteration of Superman is the fact that at the helm of this is James Gunn. He's the guy behind all the Guardians of the Galaxy films. He's the guy who then pivoted towards DC and then did Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, and has since become head of DC Films. And so this film isn't just a new Superman film, which in and of itself is quite big news. We had Christopher Reeves, obviously. Christopher Reeve. He was the emblematic Superman. Then we had Henry Cavill, who's kind of gone on to bigger and better things with The Witcher. There were other Supermen before then. I have to confess, Superman isn't for me the first choice I would have reached out for if I was the newly head of DC Films, wanting to make my mark, whilst simultaneously films like The Batman and until Joker 2, Joker were kind of pointing towards a darker, more sinister, more adult kind of exploration of comic book heroes and villains and all that kind of stuff. What you think you're going to get with James Gunn is comedy and quite sort of splenetic, scatological comedy. You know, he's willing to kind of kill an entire cast in the pre-title sequence of, say, the Suicide Squad. He's incredibly rude. You remember, he was fired from Marvel for historic joke tweets around all sorts of dodgy material. So he's avant-garde in the sense of a mainstream head of a sort of studio. And he's avant-garde when it comes to superhero films. He adopts a very different approach. He's willing to go the extra yard, do the things that other directors aren't willing to do. And really with this sort of, if you like, intellectual property or this kind of franchise, the franchise of Superman, my concern has always been from the get-go that James Gunn is too cool for Superman. Because if I'm honest, I don't know if you feel this, but I've always found Superman a little bit cringe. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, of course, Christopher Reeve was my generation Superman, and that first film, Superman, with Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, and he came from Krypton and Kryptonite and all this kind of stuff. You know, that it was kind of made at a time when comic book heroes and Batman on telly and all that, they weren't taken seriously. They were camp. They were pantomime almost. It was piss-takey material. Now, it's not to say the Superman films were piss-takey, but they were camp. They were sort of more in the vein of Flash Gordon than they were serious. And then the Henry Cavill films, of which I've seen a few, were very dark and didn't really press the right buttons. So this film has to do a lot of different things, or this trailer certainly has to sort of deliver on a lot of different things. It's a tough ask. I'm still, and I don't even know even if he makes a success of it, I don't think I'll ever agree with James Gunn choosing Superman as his opening salvo in a renewed, rebooted DC cinematic universe. But for those of you who aren't interested in all that kind of superhero, what's the fucking Marvel DC background, Superman, do you like Superman? Is he a superhero you can get on board with? I've always had this dilemma with Superman. I know that kryptonite is his weakness, but I've also sort of felt about him, he's so sort of impenetrable, he's so undefeatable that it becomes a little bit boring. I mean, you know, yeah, there's the curl and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, this film alleges to explore Clark Kent, aka Superman, played by David Corenswet, his Kryptonian heritage. And what I'm wondering whether we might get here, an illegal alien in New York type thing. Are we going to be dealing with him as an outsider, a migrant, him trying to get to grips with his origin story and how that allows him to fit in the world? So without further ado, let's jump in on Superman official teaser trailer. Some of the kind of photos, posters and all that kind of artwork that I've seen for this has pointed towards, I felt, a more light-hearted approach to Superman. I don't think you can get heavy and worthy with him. For that hurt. Classic pants. Classic curl. goofy. Dog. Please be his dog.
Crypto. Home. Take me home.
Flipping heck. So it had the music. It was very sort of laden in meaning and weight. It felt heavy and portentous. And then the dog, Crypto, is that his name? Crypto, running through the snow. It could have been Toffee. I tell you what I'm surprised by, apart from him whistling for his dog and the dog running through the snow, which I think James Gunn has a thing, doesn't he, about animal. I mean, think of Rocket Raccoon, think of King Shark, is it? He likes an animal. The eagle, even in Peacemaker. He likes a sort of animal character. You know, all of the Daily Planet kind of, you know, sort of building interiors, Lois Lane, The Office, absolute stereotypical Superman. Why do it again? Why make it again? They can't be making it again. But then we quite quickly got into an awful lot of stuff. Obviously him on the porch there, I presume, with his adoptive family, his stepdad perhaps is giving him a hug and saying, look, I just want to know who my dad is. I know how he feels. He just wants to know where he comes from. Who thinks Lex Luthor could be his dad? I know it doesn't work in ages, but they're all hundreds and thousands of years old. Lex Luthor is in there as a villain. And that's one very busy part of it. Lex Luthor's in there, crying at one point, crying. But then he had the scene of him walking through the street. I think the most interesting sequence in this for me was him walking through the street and the guy throwing a can at the back of his head. What's going on there? A lot of people not happy with him. A lot of people cross with him. Who's the guy who fired something out of his fist? Who's that? And then there was a lot of sort of, and then there was the monster. And then for me, it got a bit too much. Then it all got a bit too obviously superhero-y and kind of like everything else we've seen. We even had a close-up of a strange-faced thing that looked like Nebula, was it? The blue eyes and sort of strange skin. So, you know, and then the scene in the kind of American football stadium, force fields. I have to say, it started well as a teaser for me. But then by the end, I felt like, am I getting anything new? I think the one thing I would say is its colour palette, almost self-consciously so, is brighter, isn't it, than the Henry Cavill kind of iteration. This is brighter, it's breezier. You've got the kind of, you know, you've got the kryptonite coming out of the ice and all that. Every quintessential image and iconography, piece of iconography is there, isn't it? And he looks the part. I mean, he looks the part. But at this point, and I suppose the point of a teaser trailer is to get you excited. At the moment, I feel like we're treading water, dare I say. Not treading water, but treading water in the air. What do you think?